Okay, we are now recording. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anthony Salazar, and I'm the graduate student and postdoc services specialist for the College of the Environment. I'm very happy to be here with you today to introduce our topic, our um, our series, our ongoing professional and career development series from the Dean's Office. And as you know, every quarter we present a program that's geared toward your professional and career development. Last quarter, we did a session on mentoring. This quarter, our session is on resilience. Next quarter, in the spring, we'll be doing a session perhaps in conjunction with our student advisory council on career development as well. So look for some announcements on that coming up. So today we're here for a workshop entitled Resilience and Wellbeing for Graduate Students. And with us is to facilitate this discussion is Megan Kennedy, who is the director of the Resilience Lab. Her work focuses on leading strategic initiatives to support mental health and well-being on campus. A licensed mental health counselor, Megan previously served as a clinical director and youth and family therapist at Youth Eastside Services in Bellevue. Megan received training in dialectical behavioral therapy, as well as cognitive behavior therapy and other evidence and mindfulness-based therapies. So please welcome Megan Kennedy.
Thanks, Anthony, and thanks for all your work in coordinating today's workshop. I'm really happy to be here, and welcome everybody, and thanks for taking time out of your Thursday afternoon to join the conversation. I'm gonna take a moment here just to share my screen and bring my PowerPoint deck up. So as Anthony said, this workshop is entitled Resilience and Wellbeing for Graduate Students. I am the director of the UW Resilience Lab, which is, it's a unit that's located kind of under undergraduate academic affairs. Typically when we're on campus, we're in Mary Gates Hall, Suite 274. And typically we would be doing this in person, but I'm thankful for the opportunity to be able to connect with you via Zoom this afternoon, despite the remote conditions that we find ourselves in. The purpose of the lab is to promote well-being at the UW through education, training, research partnerships, and core programs and initiatives. So we have a lot of kind of interesting programs and initiatives happening. I'm going to share a few of those with you just so that you have a sense of our work. And also because there's some opportunities for you to be more engaged with the Resilience Lab if this is a topic that you're interested in. And so to begin with, I wanted to share a recent piece of work that we put out, which is called the Wellbeing for Life and Learning Initiative Guidebook. This is an 87-page resource guide that offers a bunch of like research-based teaching practices and testimony that helps instructors support the whole student in the classroom. In other words, what we're thinking about creating in the Resilience Lab is thinking about our work as existing along kind of a broad continuum of care at the university, where some of the supports around mental health and well-being for students exist in, co-curricular spaces. You might think about like UW Recreation, the IMA, the Counseling Center, disability resources for students, and all sorts of like great programs that we have on campus for undergraduate and graduate students. And then kind of on this other end of the continuum, we have this opportunity to develop a culture of well-being in the other spaces that we occupy, like the learning environment in the classroom or in field work, et cetera. And the Resilience Lab is really focused on the latter there, like really thinking about the classroom as a place that we can nurture mental health and well-being and in academic spaces. Some of you might even be in positions where you're serving as a TA or an RA or a GSA. And if so, I think that this guidebook could have some, some suggestions and recommendations for you too about how to support other students in your role, in those types of roles. Anyway, I included the download here button in case you're interested in checking it out after the workshop, and we'll be sure to send the PowerPoint deck out to you as well, so you don't need to take a bunch of notes during the training, but rather just be present and know that you'll get all the slides afterwards. This is the framework that we operate under in the Resilience Lab. We developed this framework in collaboration with instructors across Bothell, Tacoma, and Seattle campuses, as well as some key staff members and students. We refer to this framework as the foundations of student well-being, and included in it is the premise that well-being has to do with equity and access, our connectedness to each other, the opportunity to build resilience coping skills, and then connecting to the environment, really thinking about that interconnectedness between the health of the environment and the health of us as people, and attending to that as a university, and really thinking about the university's responsibility in nurturing that interconnectedness. And so, like at a very simple level, this could be, instructors thinking about opportunities to teach students outside or encourage students to be outside. That's at a very basic level, but even at that basic level, we know that 10 minutes outside for a college student can help reduce stress and depression and anxiety. So we have a bunch of suggestions in the fourth section of the guidebook around connecting to the environment that you might be interested in exploring. Also related to that, the lab, I just want to put in a plug, because the Resilience Lab, we are partnering pretty closely over the last several years with the Campus Sustainability Fund. And every spring, we collaborate with them to offer seed grants to folks on campus who have their own ideas for how to promote resilience and compassion on campus. And the application for seed grants is coming out soon. And in fact, there's a workshop about how to get funding that's next Thursday afternoon. And the kind of topics that these seed grants are based on is this interconnectedness between the environment and sustainability, resilience and compassion, and addressing racism and equity. And so if those are themes that you care about and you're interested in getting awarded some funding to run with a program that you have in mind, the seed grants are up to $3,000, and the application's open soon. So it might be something you want to check out. And I'm happy to answer questions about that toward the end of the workshop if you specifically want to know more. And then finally, the other program I wanted to mention is called Be Real. And Be Real is one of the programs that we offer across Tacoma, Bothell, and Seattle campuses as well. And this is a 6-week skills group that's based in dialectical behavioral therapy, which is kind of within the umbrella of cognitive behavioral therapies. It's a real skill-based theory developed here at the UW by a professor named Dr. Marsha Linehan. And then Be Real is also based in another theory called mindfulness-based stress reduction. And with those theories as the underpinning of Be Real, we offer these 6-week skill groups where we really focus on teaching resilience coping skills and other practices that, as it says here, encourage compassion for yourself and others. And students have really been enjoying participating in Be Real. There's what we're learning through our kind of assessment of the program is that students are walking away with some skills that they can use to help navigate the kind of experience of being a student at the UW. And it also helps them feel more connected to others because it's done in a group format. And so this might be something you're interested in too. And one of the reasons I wanted to highlight it is because a lot of the content that I'm going to be talking about today is actually drawn from one of the modules of Be Real. So I'm pulling content specifically from the 4th week of this 6-week program. And so you'll get a little bit of a flavor of what Be Real is like. And if you find it useful today, like, oh, some of that stuff is kind of helpful or applicable to my life, this might be something that you would want to check out. And it's free for students, which is a nice benefit too. So I'm going to carry on with the workshop now. But before I do, I just want to mention that, the way I facilitate is I'm going to be, talking until probably around 4, and then we'll break out into small groups to kind of unpack some of the content that I share and for y'all to be able to connect with each other and talk about what stands out to you, how you might imagine applying some of the concepts and skills that I talk about in your everyday life as a student. And then we'll come back and share a little bit about the themes that emerged in the small group, and we'll wrap up before 4:30. During the presentation, I'd love for you to interact with me and others. I think chat is a really great way to contribute, and I'll ask some questions and be really, encouraging of you participating via chat. Also, at any time, you can unmute yourself and just ask a question. I feel really open to just any way that you want to participate to make this kind of feel as in person as possible while we're here together. So to start, I'm going to invite you again to the chat just to define resilience. One thing about presenting here with within this College of the Environment is that resilience is a theme that is, I think, probably resonant for many of you as it is for us in the lab. And so I'd love to hear some of your definitions for resilience or some of the synonyms that come to mind when you think of this word. And feel free to share those in the chat. And as they come in, I'll just read a few of your ideas out loud. Oops, there we go. So I'm going to open up my chat box just to see what words come to mind when you think of the word resilience. Thanks, Emily. All right, so I'm going to start reading a few. I see ability to bounce back, the ability to thrive despite adverse circumstances, the ability to withstand stress and to be adaptive. Awesome. Thanks for participating there. So, and what I'm noticing is that just in those 4 responses, we almost have a definition that's really reflective of a definition that I included on my next slide. So we can take a look at that. And while you read this definition, I'm just going to make a few other comments about resilience. Just some of the ways that we think about the concept in the lab. As mentioned here around being able to withstand stress from Bob, and to be able to thrive despite adverse circumstances. We're also thinking about resilience as the ability to skillfully cope with adversity or challenge. And it's like an innate capacity of our brain to be able to cope with challenges, and quite a miraculous one if we think about it. It enables us to recover. It enables us to be flexible to life events that might be disturbing or challenging. Certainly, I think this year has really demonstrated kind of how resilience operates when we're, in navigating all the different circumstances that life might throw at us, from the ones at school and to the other ones that we've been presented with over the course of 2020 and 2021. And it also helps us respond empathetically to other people who are in need. Like when we're resilient, we're able to also be present for others as well. So those are just some additional thoughts. And I like what Laura says here too, around bending and not breaking. Somebody in a recent group that I said used a kind of similar analogy of things being able to bend instead of breaking. And sometimes people describe it like a rubber band stretching and then returning to its original form. So having some of those visuals is helpful as well. Another thing about resilience that I wanted to point out and stress is that resilience is learnable. So it's not something that we either have or don't have. And it's something that's learnable, and not just like in young children, but rather something that's learnable over the course of our lives. So we can become more resilient over time. And if we put our kind of mind and intention on developing our resilience and learn different kind of skills and practices that help develop our resilience, we can really change the way that we're able to handle stress. And what's happening in terms of building resilience is being able to really change kind of some of the patterns or habits of our brain that we've formed to develop new pathways that are more resilient pathways. There's a saying in psychology that what fires together wires together. And so the things that we think about and pay attention to in life can become new kind of habits of the mind. And so at the Resilience Lab, and through our programs like Be Real, for example, we're really trying to help people develop those resilience coping skills so that they become the automatic ways that we kind of address stress or respond to stress, as opposed to some of the maybe automatic ways that we're responding to stress that are like less helpful. So we're looking to help folks create ways that are, more balanced and less negative ways of coping with stress overall. Sometimes the Resilience Lab, I think if critiqued, people might make assumptions about it as, a space that's trying to promote like relaxation or happiness. And though those things are important, what we're really trying to do is help people just really cope effectively with the different stimulus and stress that we're dealing with. And at the same time, we understand that we can't just ask individuals to become resilient, to be able to like manage stressors effectively, but we also need to be thinking about the conditions that create the stress in the first place. So the mission of the lab essentially is to both teach the resilience coping skills to individuals, like some of the stuff we'll talk about today, while also attending to some of those bigger structural issues that create stress to begin with, things like oppression and racism, that create environments where people are experiencing stressors. So I'll pause there. If you have any kind of thoughts or comments or questions as I talk, feel free again to just contribute to the chat box, and I'll keep an eye on that as I present. So one of the skills that I wanted to talk about today around this theme of resilience is referred to as the window of tolerance. And this is where I'm going to be dropping into the content from Be Real in the 4th week. So it's almost as though you're joining the group to get a little demo of what it's like. In the 4th week, we describe a concept called the window of tolerance. And what the window of tolerance is a concept that helps us remember that within us, we have an ability when we're in our window of tolerance to be able to cope with stress that might be, presented to us. So we could imagine the stress that comes, the natural stressors that come with being a graduate student. So managing multiple responsibilities, managing kind of classroom responsibilities and work responsibilities, field work, relationships with peers, relationships with your advisor. Some of you may have other family responsibilities and home responsibilities. So it's a lot to navigate. And when we're in our window of tolerance, we're able to navigate those different stressors effectively. It's not that we're living a life that is, void of stress. It just is when we're in a place where the stress is manageable and we can manage it effectively, and that we have the tools and the coping skills to be able to manage it effectively. The tools and skills that we're trying to teach across campus. As humans, we can get kicked out of our window of tolerance. And when we do, we can go into either what we refer to as hyperarousal, which is maybe what you've heard referred to as fight or flight mode. So imagine that you're presented with some kind of stressor. Maybe it's a decision is made, that is not favorable to you, and you might go into fight or flight mode. Fight mode, is where we'll talk. I'll give details about what fight and flight mode are, but I think that this is what I want to say here is that when we go into fight or flight mode, that kind of automatic stress response comes from that kind of older part of our brain, where that kind of animal instinct of where we're trying to keep ourselves safe. And when that stress is presented to us, we have that automatic response. And at times that automatic response can be really appropriate for the situation. There's times where we want to be able to respond quickly in a way that would keep us safe. Oftentimes, however, we go into these kind of automatic stress responses that aren't necessarily appropriate or effective with the situation that's presented to us. So imagine getting an email, not liking the content of the email, and going right into a reactive space, fight mode, and writing back and pushing send. It's like we want to be able to avoid the consequences of our automatic stress reactions. And so we teach this concept so that folks can start to become aware of what different types of situations might kick you out of your window of tolerance into these modes of fight or flight, or on the other side, into the mode of hypoarousal, which is freeze or numbing. And so in a moment, I'll give you an opportunity to think about or reflect back on times that you may have been kicked out of your window of tolerance and kicked into either a fight, flight, or freeze response. So our window of tolerance can shrink depending on kind of the conditions of our life in a moment. And so for some people, folks are finding that their window of tolerance this past year in, as we've been navigating the pandemic, for example, has felt smaller. Meaning that they find themselves kind of getting kicked out and going into fight, flight, or freeze mode kind of more easily. Our window of tolerance can also grow, and so that we're able to tolerate stress more effectively with more like kind of breadth and depth. And so some of the concepts and skills that I'm going to present here in a moment are they give us two options. One is to either grow our window of tolerance, and another is to be able to return to our window of tolerance if there's an instance where we get kicked out. So this is just another visual that I think is really clear, that the reference is down here, the National Institute for the Clinical Application of Behavioral Medicine. This is going to be on a handout that I provide to you too, so you can read it in more depth. But here you see when you go into hyperarousal, you might feel anxious, angry, out of control, overwhelmed. Your body wants to fight or run away. And it's not something you choose. It's just like that reaction takes over. So you experience some interpersonal conflict and you just want to like leave out the front door, for example. And then hypoarousal is when you feel spacey or zoned out, numb, frozen, your body wants to shut down. Again, it's not something you choose. These reactions just take over. So in my role at the UW, I used to do a lot more individual work with students, and students, some students that I would work with would describe like, I've just been laying in bed and watching Netflix for the last few days and I can't seem to do anything else. And that might be a signal of being kind of in more of a hypoarousal, numbed out kind of place. And so what my role now is thinking about ways to help people, just kind of be aware that we have these automatic reactions to stress, and B, to understand that there's things that we can do to help us kind of come back to that more centered place. And 3, to be able to, apply those skills when it might be helpful. Now, there's some situations that are, as we talk about these skills today, I think that like these skills are really helpful to apply to like situations that are like small and medium to begin with before trying to apply these skills to like really big circumstances. Because sometimes, I'll teach these skills and be real, for example, and folks will come back and say, I had this huge thing happen this week and it was really hard for me to be able to apply the skills. And so kind of like working out a muscle, it can help to start with like smaller situations to apply the skills to, and then kind of gradually graduate to bigger circumstances. Yeah, so just to kind of continue, hyperarousal is that desire to fight or run away. Sometimes if we're in hyperarousal, we might say or do something we regret, which is why it's important to be able to build some awareness around that state. And we might experience some interpersonal conflict. And when we're in hypoarousal, we might find ourselves avoiding or procrastinating. We might find it difficult to focus or feel zoned out, isolation, excessive sleeping, numbness, frozen. And so I provide these examples just to get you kind of thinking about whether or not you've ever experienced being kicked out of your window of tolerance, and to start thinking about like if there's certain types of situations that cause you to get kicked out, and to think about like what we can talk about, what skills you might apply to be able to stay within it. So I'm going to pause and just give you a moment to do some free writing. I'll time about a 1-minute free write. Or you can just think to yourself if you'd prefer. Obviously it's up to you. But think of an example where you were kicked out of your window of tolerance, and maybe identify if you went into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And also think about what thoughts or feelings or sensations you experienced and what did you do. So I'm going to give you a moment to do some free writing, and then we'll come back in a minute. You're not going to share these, so you can feel free to know that this is just a personal writing activity. All right, so that was about a minute. And we're going to transition now to talk about, so with that, keep holding that kind of situation in mind. I might return back to it over the next half hour and have you think about that scenario as we think about a couple different practices. And so thank you for taking the time to just kind of give some thought to times that you may have experienced that kind of fight, flight, or freeze response. So I'm going to share 3 different practices that can help us when we're to return to the window of tolerance or to expand our window of tolerance. And I'm going to kind of alternate between leading some practices experientially and then just also kind of talking about the value of others. And so as I lead the practices, I want to start by just saying all of these practices are really just an opportunity for you to experience them along with me if you are interested. And you can also just kind of listen and observe. It's entirely up to you. But they are different practices that we've been endorsing in Be Real over the last 4 years or so, and practices that students have said that have been really helpful for them. And so particularly the ones that I'm presenting on today, we've got some good feedback from students about the application of these practices and helping them manage stress. And so that's some of the reason I wanted to share them with you. And I should say that like the work that we're doing with Be Real is in conjunction with the Center for Child and Family Wellbeing, which is a center within the psychology department. And a faculty member there, Dr. Lily Lengua, is kind of the primary researcher around Be Real. And another staff member there, Robin Long, is one of the primary authors of the Be Real curriculum. And the 3 of us have been really thinking about trying to identify like what skills and practices would help students and graduate students navigate. And so just a little bit additional context about where this is coming from that I meant to say at the beginning. All right, so I'm gonna teach +2 breathing, talk a little bit about the importance of movement, and then we're gonna do progressive muscle relaxation to start. So for this first experience, +2 breathing is a breathing practice. And so I'll pause in a moment and guide it. But before I do, I just want to say a couple of things about +2 breathing. So +2 breathing is a breathing practice that where we extend our exhale by 2 seconds. So I'll guide you through this, but if like, say your inhale is about 4 seconds long, with +2 breathing, it's called +2 because we add 2 seconds to our out breath so that our exhale is, in that case, 6 seconds. And the reason this can be effective is because when we breathe in, essentially, we're kind of bringing a sense of like alertness to our bodies. We're kind of, it's giving us kind of an influx of energy. And then when we breathe out, and particularly when we have that extended out breath, it's relaxing our nervous system, lowering our heart rate, and making us feel more calm. So in this kind of breath cycle, you're both achieving some clarity and focus and some calmness at the same time. So for me, +2 breathing is like a really effective way to make me feel like grounded and centered before I, before different kind of situations that I might be dealing with, meetings or trainings or speaking opportunities or any number of things that I might be facilitating. +2 breathing is just a really nice exercise to kind of prepare. And so as I've been teaching Be Real to students and staff across the UW, folks have been commenting that +2 breathing is something that they turn to too, because it's something you can just do. It's an in the moment practice. You can just do it anytime, breathe in, breathe out, and extend your breath by 2 seconds. You could do it when you were on your way to class or in between meetings, for example. So that's what +2 breathing is. And we'll transition here and just do the practice together. So to start, I would just invite you to find a place, if you'd like to participate in doing +2 breathing with me, just find a place where you feel comfortable in your chair, grounded, but still awake and alert. So I'm sitting on the edge of my chair and I have my feet on the ground. And then I just have my hands resting in my lap. And you can either close your eyes if you feel comfortable, or just settle your eyes at a soft gaze a few feet in front of you. And just take a few breaths just to kind of settle into this practice together. Just noticing how your breath feels this afternoon. Our breath changes, day to day and hour by hour. So you might just kind of notice how your breath feels in this moment, and if it feels shallow or full, if your breath feels short or long. Then I would invite you to just notice how long your inhale is. So as you just breathe in at a normal, comfortable, a normal, comfortable rate for you, just silently count how many seconds your inhale is. So interestingly, mine is about 4 seconds right now. That doesn't mean yours will be, but mine's about 4 seconds. And so I'll just extend my out breath by 2 seconds, making that exhale 6 seconds long. And I'll invite you to do the same. And if 2 seconds feels a little too long, you could experiment with having an extended out breath of 1 extra second, just kind of see what feels comfortable for you. And for the next minute, we'll just do +2 breathing, breathing in and then breathing out that extended exhale. If you notice your mind wanders, that's really the mind's natural tendency, and you can just bring your awareness back to breathing and back to counting for just another 30 seconds or so. And just feel free to take a few breaths, just kind of normal, everyday breaths. And if you need to, you might wiggle your body a little bit, just stretch and move. We've been sitting so stagnant, or many of us have been sitting fairly stagnant in front of our computers now for the last year. So just remembering to move if needed, and then we'll come back to the large group. So that first practice, +2 breathing, is one way to return to the window of tolerance. For the reasons I mentioned, just being able to kind of lower our heart rate and deregulate a little bit. So if you're in a state of hyper or hypoarousal, it can help you. If you're in hypoarousal, kind of return to the window of tolerance. If you're in hyperarousal, it can also help you kind of come down to that place of equilibrium. So something you can do in the moment. If you have any kind of reflections on what +2 breathing was like for you, for better or for worse, not all, definitely we're not a one size fits all kind of philosophy at the lab, but rather we try to teach as many practices as possible to help people kind of figure out what works for them. If for some people, focusing on the breath and focusing on counting is really effective. And for some people, they prefer other different types of practices. So if you have thoughts about how that was for you, feel free to reflect on those in the chat, and if you feel comfortable, but no pressure there. I want to continue by just talking a little bit about movement. Exercise, movement, any kind of activity is another really effective way to change our mood and respond to stress. I think that's pretty well known, but I think it's important to also just really keep in mind when we think about working with instructors. One of the things that we're really encouraging instructors is to provide movement breaks for students to stand up and walk around, walk around the building when we're on campus, or get up and stretch their legs, even get up and stretch, because it can just really help with focus and mood shifts. And so in regard to the window of tolerance, we really advocate for movement because, again, if you're in that state of hyperarousal or hypoarousal, it can really help you either, return to the window of tolerance from either direction. And so with movement, we're not saying here that like everybody needs to become a runner or, you know, do the same kind of movement, go to the gym, etc., but rather really kind of figuring out what works for you. And so that might be, you know, dancing, that might be yoga, that might be running, that might be hiking, could be any number of things, but really kind of being, you know, taking note that if, you know, kind of on a regular basis, that can help expand your window of tolerance so that you're able to cope with stress more effectively day in and day out. Or if you're in a moment where you're experiencing some stress, it might be an intervention that you could run on yourself to be able to go, you know, do some activity and allow some space and time for your mood to shift before you respond to the stressor that you're dealing with. So a little plug for movement. In the handout that I created for this workshop, I directed you to a bunch of like free opportunities for online kind of classes, yoga classes and fitness classes that are offered at the UW through the whole U. Sometimes students aren't aware that there's all sorts of options around these different types of classes through the whole U, but they're wonderful and I recommend them. And so I directed you that way. The IMA also opened this month, which is great. So if you're kind of local and have the opportunity to safely visit the IMA, it's now open for students if you're interested. Great. And now I'm going to lead another practice called progressive muscle relaxation. And it's another common technique for managing distress. With progressive muscle relaxation, we tense groups of muscles first and observe what is happening in our body. And then we consciously relax that group of muscles. And so we're going to try this as a group. And again, I'll facilitate progressive muscle relaxation. And you can see how this feels and kind of how it compares to Plus2 breathing or other practices that you do when you're trying to manage stress. So again, totally optional, but if you're interested in trying this, I'll invite you again to sit in a position that allows you to feel awake and comfortable. To reiterate, again, I have my feet on the floor and I'm resting my hands on top of my lap. And you can either close your eyes or just rest your gaze a few feet in front of you. And we'll reconnect with our breath, just noticing again the breath as it comes in and out of our body. And as we move through this practice, I'm going to cue you to tighten a muscle group and then relax that muscle group. And this practice is an opportunity to kind of compare the experience of tension versus relaxation and just explore some of the places that you may be holding tension in this moment. So we'll first bring awareness to our hands, turning our palms up toward the ceiling, and then breathing in and making fists by curling your fingers in toward your palms and really making tight fists and taking a breath or two here. And then when you breathe out, you can relax and open your hands. And now we'll bring awareness to our arms, tightening the muscle groups in our forearms and our biceps, making fists again too here. Taking a breath or two with your arms tightened. And then when you breathe out next, you can fully relax all the muscles in your arms and hands. And then next, we'll move our awareness to our back, breathing in and tightening the muscles throughout your back, drawing your shoulder blades in toward each other, taking a breath or two here. And then slowly breathing out and releasing all the muscles in your back. And then when you breathe in next, you can shrug your shoulders up to your ears, taking a breath or two up here. Maybe noticing how it feels to breathe with your shoulders tense. And then you can slowly breathe out, letting your shoulders relax and dropping them down. That one's always the most noticeable to me. And then we'll move our awareness to our head and face, drawing all the muscles in your face together and breathing here for a few moments. And so pressing your lips together, scrunching your nose up. Maybe you'll notice you might stop breathing a little bit. Don't worry. And then when you breathe out, you can relax your jaw and the muscles around your nose and your eyes and your forehead. And then we'll just take a few breaths here at your own pace, just noticing any changes in your body or in your mind. And again, you might want to just move your body a little bit, wiggle it, kind of stretch, shift around if you need. It may be that you became aware of some tension you're holding in your body, and feel free to kind of stretch a little bit if you need to. And when you're ready, we'll continue on. So that was progressive muscle relaxation. And again, feel free in the chat if you have any observations about either +2 breathing or progressive muscle relaxation. Feel free to share anything you observe about those practices in the chat. And would love to kind of know if these are practices that you've tried before, or if you've practiced similar ones, and how those work for you. And then the third, another kind of practice or concept that I want to introduce is called the 3 Ps. So the 3 Ps is another practice that can be helpful in when we're dealing with a stressor and we need to create the space between the stressor, encountering the stressor, the stimulus, and there's this opportunity to have like our automatic stress response where we might go into kind of a fight, flight, or freeze response. And what we're effectively trying to do when we are met with these stressors is to create a little bit of space, right, between the experience of that stressor stimulus and our response to it. So instead of having an automatic reaction, what we're trying to do is create kind of a gap there where we can actually have a response that comes from a place of maybe a little bit more from the evolved prefrontal cortex of our brain, where we're aware of the stressor. And with that awareness, we can think about a way that we might be able to respond effectively rather than automatically. And then, as I said earlier, do or say something that we later regret. So like in that moment when we experience that stressor, that's where we might think about like pausing and doing some +2 breathing, if we can, pausing and maybe saying to the person, like if the stressor is coming from another person, I think I need to like take a moment and go for a walk, and then when I come back, let's talk about this, and I should be in a place where I might be able to like think this through with you in a more effective way, right? That might be a way to incorporate movement. Or being able to do progressive muscle relaxation. Even sometimes we recommend in the moment practice of just like squeezing your fists together and then releasing. And in that releasing, kind of imagining that you're kind of offering the person some compassion. And so you could do this even during class. Someone says something that you don't maybe totally agree with. And instead of reacting to it, you can do under the table, right? Some squeezing your fists together and then just opening up your palms and sending some compassion. So those are just things that you can do in response to stress that help us expand that window of tolerance. So just noticing in the chat, yeah, thank you. It says both really helped. Noticed a difference right now with the progressive muscle relaxation, which I tried before. But can forget about, and liking the progressive muscle relaxation in my shoulders. Yeah, thanks for sharing, both of you, those comments. I try to create spaces where people can be honest about like what practices work and what don't, because we end up having really great conversations about how for some people, it's really that somatic stuff, like the embodied being able to like tense and release. That can be, it's like, whoa, I didn't realize how much tension I was holding in my shoulders or what my body felt like until I gave it some attention. And for other folks, it's like, oh, I really needed to pause and remember to breathe. Or for other folks, it might be about movement and so on and so forth. So just being able to kind of have some options and to know what works for you can be helpful. So nice to see your responses. And it sounds like both of you thought progressive muscle relaxation was helpful. So now I'll introduce this third one, which is the 3 Ps. The 3 Ps stand for pausing, so that you experience the stressor and just kind of hitting that, metaphoric pause button, just to take a moment to be able to breathe and become grounded. Becoming present, tuning into any thoughts or emotions that you might be experiencing. And like, there's another saying kind of in the psych world, name it to tame it. This is a term coined by Dan Siegel, who's a really famous neuroscientist and author. And Dan Siegel says, if you're having an emotion, you can name that emotion to tame it, name it to tame it. Mr. Rogers similarly said you can mention it to manage it. And what both of these ideas mean is that when we bring some cognition to the emotion that we're experiencing, we can it serves as almost like a cooling function. So if I'm able to cognitively identify, oh, I'm feeling anger, or I'm feeling sadness, or I'm feeling whatever it may be that you're feeling, by just even naming it, it allows us to kind of decompress just a little bit. And that isn't to say that we're trying to like do away with anger, ignore anger, or avoid anger, and by any means. Here the philosophy is that all those emotions are important and serve a purpose, but sometimes if we're we might be experiencing the emotion in a way that is making it difficult for us to be effective with how we're trying to manage the situation. And so being able to name it allows us just to be able to kind of like come back to that window of tolerance just enough to be able to manage it more effectively. Yeah, so all that to say, being present is about tuning into those thoughts and emotions, maybe naming like, okay, I'm catastrophizing the situation here, or I am really judging the situation. So kind of labeling some of the thoughts you might be doing, or labeling emotions. And then the third step of the 3 Ps is to proceed. And we proceed by asking ourselves, okay, well, what would be needed to be effective? So to give you an illustration, in my role as the director of the Resilience Lab, I was, I don't know, it wasn't too long ago that I was invited to present on the Resilience Lab by our Vice President for Student Life to our regents, so to our Board of Regents. And so this was a pretty significant opportunity as, at the helm of the lab, to be able to share like the work that we're doing to this, group of regents. And so I was excited and put together the slides that we needed and was like all set for whenever this was going to happen. And then I got the email that was like, oh, never mind. I'm going to ask somebody else to present. And so you can imagine in that moment, I would have like that felt really high stakes. I had all sorts of emotions show up in me. And the last thing I would want to do is, to start emailing in that moment. So what did I do? Well, I paused and I allowed myself to just take some space from my computer. And I'm sharing this example just to illustrate how this stuff kind of works in real time, but I'm a human too. I'm always doing my best to apply these skills and concepts. And in this moment, it worked. I was able to effectively get up, take a moment, and between that, experience the stressor instead of just reacting. I was able to kind of think about my response and get a little perspective and come back down to the window of tolerance. And during that time, I was able to start tuning into some of the thoughts and emotions that I was experiencing. And I noticed that the thought that I was having were not really the facts. I didn't really know the facts of the situation. I didn't know why I wasn't going to be presenting to the regents anymore. But I did know Denzel, the VP for Student Life, really well. And I realized, oh, he would never just offer something and then take it away. Like there has to have been something, insert the actual situation in here that I just am not aware of, which caused him to have to pivot and have somebody else present that day. And so with that insight, which I was only able to do because I took some space to get some perspective, I was then able to reply to Denzel in a way that was much, much more effective. I was able to reply in just a few words with grace, and it was what I needed to do, in that moment. Interestingly, Denzel wrote back right away and was like, commented on my kind of compassion and understanding. I think, it was, he was struck by the way that I responded, because maybe typically somebody wouldn't respond that way. And so that's just kind of me drawing out how the 3 Ps work in a story. So let's do this one too. For the 3 Ps, I'll lead you through this practice, and this is where it might be helpful to turn back to that, to the example that you provided earlier, that you wrote down where you were kicked out of your window of tolerance before. And so think about that situation. Well, first of all, you can just kind of get situated again where you are able to kind of reflect back on the situation. So you might go back to the way that you were sitting when you were breathing, in that position where you feel awake and comfortable, and just bring yourself back to that instance or that situation where you were kicked out of your window of tolerance. Or you can come up with a new example of any kind of an exchange or instance that you had in the past week, where pausing before responding to somebody or making a decision might have improved the outcome. Kind of like my story about Denzel. Was there a moment where pausing before you made a decision or reacted to somebody could have improved the outcome? And I'll give you 15 seconds or so to think of an example and resituate yourself in that experience. Just imagining yourself in the same situation. And then we'll start with the first step, which is just to pause right now in this moment and just take 2 or 3 slow breaths. And then tune into how you feel right now as you remember this exchange or this instance, noticing any emotions that are present or any thoughts that are present. Or you might be aware of like just other sensations in your body. Like maybe you're noticing that when you think about the situation, you might be experiencing some tension or butterflies, or heart rate might be beating faster. Like just see if you notice any hands might be, you might have, your hands might be in fists, like anything. Just kind of think about, are there any other sensations that you're experiencing? And then the third step, to proceed, ask yourself, what will be effective? So when you think about this exchange or this instance, what would be effective? You can take a few more breaths now, just noticing any thoughts that come up, or feelings that come up. And that is the 3 Ps. And so again, it's pausing, taking a moment just to take 2 or 3 slow breaths, being present, tuning into any thoughts or emotions, and then proceeding, asking yourself what would be effective. And that's just something that we can do when, we notice there's different situations that we encounter, whether they're with other students, again, advisors, professors, you know, in any of the work that you're doing. So we're going to transition now into small groups just to give you a chance to talk with your peers about some of the skills and concepts that were presented and how you could imagine applying them in kind of real life situations, sharing, of course, what you feel comfortable sharing. The prompt here is just sharing any observations of the concepts or practices introduced in today's workshop. So I'm going to go move you into breakout rooms now. Hey, welcome back, folks. We lost a few people right at the hour there at 4 o'clock, but we're going to wrap up in a few minutes. But before we do, it would be, here come a couple others. Hey, y'all, welcome back. I was just sharing that we lost a few folks who had to leave right at 4 o'clock. But I'm glad that you're all able to stay a little bit longer. We're going to wrap up in a bit, but before we do, it'd be cool to just hear some of the themes that emerged in your 2 breakout rooms. You don't have to share like super personally, but maybe just share a few of the themes that emerged or questions that came up so that we could have a large group conversation and connect some dots. If anyone's willing to share, that'd be awesome. And feel free to just jump in and speak on behalf of your group.
Yes, I don't mind sharing kind of a question that I've like come up with, which is, sorry, can you hear me okay? Is that coming through?
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of suggestions do you have when you've like calmed down from a situation, but maybe it's not a situation that you can solve, like maybe it's the same thing that's like stressed you out over and over again, and it's not a situation that's going to change because it's kind of out of your control, but it's like still stressing you out every time you have to deal with it.
Yeah. You know, it's the concept that comes to my mind is, speaking of, Anthony and I were just talking about Marsha Linehan, who's the psychologist I referenced at the beginning, who conceptualized dialectical behavioral therapy. And in that theory, she talks about the term radical acceptance, which is also, there's also a researcher and author, Tara Brach, Tarabrach, who wrote a book called Radical Acceptance. And the premise of radical acceptance is really being able to kind of, when we have those certain situations that where we can, you know, where we know that we don't have control of the situation, that things may be just as they are, like how do we kind of tolerate that kind of it being what it is and not being able to change it. And that's where they recommend radical acceptance. So this can be about, like, with radical acceptance, it's about like when, let's say, certain emotions arise based on that situation, the theory would talk about how when you know, instead of avoiding or denying those emotions, to actually like be present with them, like fully present with them, and name them and identify them, and then just be kind around them, you know, like being like as accepting to like, okay, well, I am angry about the situation, being kind of loving to yourself about being angry, as opposed to trying to like, I shouldn't be angry, or I don't want to be angry anymore, because it's the resistance or the pushing away that actually can have the opposite effect. You know, it doesn't actually help it, but when we can kind of just embrace the reality of the feeling more, it tends to help soothe it, which is a little paradoxical, but it is kind of what works. And then with the situation, accepting the parts of the situation that we can't change, which, you know, some situations are just so big that we can't singly affect them, but being able to think about, are there any aspects of the situation that I can change, or can I change my relationship to? So we could apply radical acceptance to anything from like the climate crisis, you know, like, okay, I can't singularly, you know, solve this whole thing by myself. And I might feel mad and I might feel scared. And I think, like, I'm going to make an assumption here that the folks in this room would, like, we don't want people to be ignoring their feelings about that or ignoring it, right? We want people to be able to acknowledge the fear or the anger that they might have about racism, about climate change, and then be asking themselves like, okay, and what can I do about the situation? So radical acceptance is about acknowledging thoughts, acknowledging feelings, accepting those, and then asking yourself, is there any part of the situation that I can change or do something about? Yeah, I can send Anthony more information about radical acceptance if you're interested, but I find that to be like, that's where my mind goes when I think of your question. I don't know if anybody else has a response that they want to offer, but that's what I thought about.
Yeah, go ahead and send me that reference, Megan,
Yeah,
please.
I will. Yeah, you bet. What else is up for folks? What about the other group? Any themes or questions emerge for you?
We talked a bit about being present with, with our emotions and with our, whatever we're feeling stressed or, and we kind of agreed that it's good to actually be present with those, kind of the second P of the 3 Ps, where really processing them and trying to figure out why we're feeling that way, and taking that time to give everyone the benefit of the doubt that we're all kind of trying our best, and can't really, so there's a lot you can't control right now, so
yeah, it reminds me
where we went to it.
Yeah, it reminds me of like another, just to throw one more concept into the mix. One of the concepts that we talk about is one called cognitive reframing. And it's like, again, like, there's a stressor, or maybe just the culmination of multiple stressors, which is maybe more what folks are experiencing, is like, it's not one thing, it's just that there's like these 100 things that I'm kind of dealing with right now. And it's causing me to feel like more irritable or more tired or more angry or more this or that. But what I hear you describing is, again, that ability to kind of pause and do some perspective taking, and maybe like zoom out enough to take in more information in order to have maybe more of a neutral or less negative experience to that. So rather than, making assumptions about other people or judging other people, you're saying like, what if we just took in a little bit more of information and the idea that this person's probably dealing with stuff too, or maybe they're having a bad day, kind of that common humanity piece. And so I think kind of, what all of this stuff has in common, what you just described and what I was just talking about, is like, is there the ability to just kind of pause and check in with what we're thinking and feeling, and zoom out a little bit to get some more perspective, or to be kind to ourselves in the moment, or to breathe, or to walk, whatever it may be. Now, I don't expect like you come to like an hour workshop and you're like, can deal with graduate school now in a more effective way, just like that. But I do hope that it's kind of like a primer to just be thinking about like, okay, yeah, we don't have to just exist with our like responses to stress. Most of us as humans have kind of maladaptive responses to stress. Like we can actually pause and think about like other ways to respond to stress that are more effective, and that there's different avenues to learn those skills, particularly at the UW, which is like the research hub for these types of skills. And so groups, things to read, like things to listen to, all sorts of different options. And so if that would be helpful for you, it's just something to consider. And sometimes folks are like, I don't have the time to breathe. And it's like, I don't know how to convince somebody to, but it can be helpful. Any questions about before, Anthony, thanks for putting that survey in the chat. So Anthony would love for you to fill out the survey so that he'll talk about it in a minute, but just more information about what type of trainings you all would like to have in the future. But any questions about any of the things I mentioned at the beginning, like the guidebook, the seed grants, or Be Real, before we close?
Yeah, did you say when the Be Real would be offered next, or when that would be starting next?
Yeah, it'll be offered spring quarter. And okay. If you reach out to me or reach out to this email, which is kind of the coordinator, we can figure out like what would be an appropriate group, like what would be a good fit for you, like because the groups are offered across campus in different just like settings, including like academic departments, community settings, so we can figure out who's offering a group in spring quarter and what would be the best fit for you and others. And it's
Okay,
6 weeks,
thank you.
90 minutes. Yeah, it's good.
Awesome. Any other questions for Megan?
Well, thanks y'all for being here. And feel free to reach out to me personally anytime. I'm just, you know, typically, again, I'd be hanging out in Mary Gates Hall. Now I'm hanging out in my home, and I'm available to talk to students one-on-one if you're interested in like resilience, well-being, environment connection stuff. Like that's like what we're up to at the lab, and would love to partner with you in exploring some of the ideas and stuff that you care about. And I mean that genuinely, just reach out anytime.
Can you put your email in the chat?
I sure can.
Awesome. And you know, sometimes I have to tell myself, you know, some of these lessons as well, and then allowing the space for grace, and hoping others allow for, you know, space for grace for me as well, because, you know, surely I make mistakes as well. But thank you, Megan, for this session. I really appreciate it. So like we said earlier, you know, we every quarter we're putting on these kinds of sessions. We're trying to find ways to help you be successful, help you find ways to cope with this incredible situation that we're finding ourselves going on. You know, next month it'll be a year since we've been sent home. And I was just telling my wife a while ago, I'm like, I just can't believe it's been a whole year. And even then I start thinking, oh, come on, it's just been, you know, it's been in this non-work. I haven't seen my coworkers in person in I don't know how long, and I haven't hugged my friends in a long time. And, you know, you just get so kind of depressed about stuff around you. But, you know, trying to find these silver linings, becoming more resilient, I think becomes a lot more pressing as time goes on. So again, thank you, Megan. I appreciate that. We'll be posting a number of these things. The session will be online as well, in addition to the PowerPoint and a few other resources that Megan will provide. So we'll put that online within the next week or so. So thank you very much for that. And also, please do click on the link and just take our surveys. We're just trying to get a feel for what's going to be helpful for you in terms of different kinds of sessions. So next quarter, we'll be looking at the themes of career exploration. So looking to partner with our college's student advisory council. And then we're also looking to put on a couple of other things that will be helpful. I don't want to give away too much here, but it's something that will be helpful in your career exploration as you start thinking about next steps, whether in academia or out. So, you know, what we're trying to do is, I used to have a dean. I used to work in the graduate school. We used to have a dean that would say, be where the puck is going to be. Which is funny because I don't think he was a hockey fan at all. But to me, that was, you know, try to anticipate what our needs of the graduate school, graduate students are going to be. And so I've carried that lesson with me. So I want to anticipate what your needs are going to be, whether you're going to be in industry or government or nonprofit or academia. You know, we're going to try to help you figure out, you know, what some of those options for your next steps might be. And in filling out that survey there, you can help us out in trying to figure out, you know, what do you need and how can we be of service to you as well. So that coming to you from the Dean's Office of the College of Environments. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your time here and sticking it out here with us. Have a great rest of the week and enjoy your weekend. And if there's anything else that, you know, comes to mind for you, let me put my email here as well, because I know I've been in contact with you, most of you, for quite a while now, but feel free to think of me as a continued resource, and so I'm here to help you as well. So thank you very much, and I'm going to end the session, and you guys take care of yourselves, okay?
Yeah, bye everybody.
All right, bye-bye, take care.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Have a good rest of the week.
Bye. Okay.